Welcome to Fast Politics, Stephen Levy.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
We are talking about perhaps one of the scariest things that I have stumbled on is a story about tech executives. And so we have Meta's CTO and leaders from OpenAI and Palantir have joined a detachment intended to make the U.S. armed forces leaner, smarter, and more lethal. Discuss.
Yeah, well, this is Detachment 201. This is something that has been in the works for about a year, maybe, from someone who's the Chief Talent Management Officer of the Pentagon, which I learned is actually a post. Someone who was a combat soldier and officer, then went to Walmart and helped them with veterans, and then he went back to the Pentagon, and he came up with this idea, talking to the Palantir CTO, to get executives from Silicon Valley and make them soldiers, at least in the Army Reserve, so they can continue this trend that's been going on for a couple of years, really, of Silicon Valley companies being more willing to work with the military and for the military in applying their advanced technology.
Advanced technology sounds good, right? I
Totally, yeah.
want to, I was a person who toured the Tesla factory and thought, like, this was before he became the Elon Musk that we all know now. But I toured it. I thought, this is pretty good. This looks good. Many years before he became what he is. But I just am curious, like, why is this bad? Because it clearly is. Can we go back and talk about what Palantir is up to? Because Palantir is very involved with our military. And I wondered if you could just sort of give us a little background on that.
Okay, yeah, well, I haven't done like a giant investigation into Palantir, but it's pretty well known. They're a company which has been very effective selling technology. It's data mining to
Right.
get information from huge caches, of data, a lot of it personal information, to help improve security. They're increasingly getting into AI, and it's a company that thrives on government contracting and is super out front in saying that, we're not going to apologize for it. If this is scary to some people, it's absolutely necessary for national security. And there's a lot of critics of Palantir who feel, they sell the police departments and things like that, that it's sort of enabling a surveillance state. So that debate goes on. And I think the larger debate we're talking about here is, as you say, gee, it sounds important, and it is important that our military is up to date. And the fact is, because of these ancient contractors that they've traditionally worked with, these big defense contractors that do these big contracts, and they come up with these elephants that cost billions of
Right.
dollars and hardly work. Yeah, it's a good idea to apply the Silicon Valley methodology to this. You see what happened when Ukraine attacked Russia with these drones, a really innovative scheme where
Right.
they parked these trucks or whatever, and they just opened up like Trojan horses and have drones out there. That's like, almost like a hacker kind of scheme. And
Yeah.
the military should be able to do that. I think what's different about this case is there's like a line to say, okay, we're getting the expertise from Silicon Valley, to say we're getting Silicon Valley people in the military. And they're
Yeah.
free, of course, to join the military, but this program lets them into the military and gives them the special privileges that most Army reservists and certainly, full-time soldiers don't have. They're not going to get sent to a battlefield, and they're not going to, maybe they visit a war zone, who knows? But their unit's not going to get called up. They're a separate unit in and of themselves. So, it's not like saying I'm in this Army Reserve unit. I'm living my life in, with my wife and my kids and my job, or my partner, and bang, I'm sent out to, Fallujah, or, some war zone, and no, their unit's not gonna get called up because they say that's not what it's for. They aren't required to spend all 120 annual hours, working on a base like most reservists do. They could work from home, and they'll start off as lieutenant colonels, which is a very high rank, and it's very unusual to start out at that rank. And the Army told me, well, here's these examples from World War II and World War I, but not quite the same. So it's a different thing, which I think gets our attention because they're still working for these companies, some of them, who are working on military contracts. So there's this potential conflict of interest that the Army says, and they say, yeah, we're doing this in a personal capacity, but it's tough to separate that from the job they work at every day.
Can you explain what data mining is just for those of us who are not completely, because I think that's an important to explain what that exactly looks like.
Sure, well, look at something that Meta certainly does, and the security forces, national they do it in national defense. When you fly, it's taking like a lot of information, personal information. In this case, it's also used in a business sense, but what we're talking about is personal information. And because you're able to accumulate it, there's things that people can learn about you because they have a lot of information, which isn't necessarily, the kind of information you shared. It might be something that even people close to you don't know, but because they have this kind of database and that kind of database, and they know what you buy, and they know where you went to school and what you lived and what your credit
Right.
cards information is. They know a lot about you and can make conclusions about you that are very, very sophisticated. And I mean, you can see this just in the way Meta uses it in using the like button. There's a researcher who discovered some years ago, I wrote about this, I wrote a book about Facebook, that with like less than like a dozen likes, they can know your sexual orientation and political leanings. With
Wow.
like 50, they'll know you as well as a friend. With 300 likes, they'll know you as well as your partner or spouse might know you. So that's pretty useful information. And Palantir is an expert at that, and using it in national security forces, intelligence forces use it for the national security.
That is a completely insane and terrifying. I mean, yikes. So you have these guys, Meta, Palantir, other technology companies involved in the military. Sort of where is this going wrong?
Well, again, this is like a new program, and we don't know what's going to happen with it. I guess I question a couple things. Can I talk to the Army about this? One was, why do you need to have them in the Army reserves, right? Why can't they do this as consultants? And I was told that there's something special and unique that they would be in a uniform and do this. I talked to one of the new lieutenant colonels, the fellow from OpenAI, who I've known for years, and and I like the guy. And he was saying, "Well, because we're in a uniform, we'd be able to connect on that." I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I mean, if someone gives you great advice, you're going to take that advice, and and it could just as well be that the people serving in the rank and file might resent these people who at a high rank in the uniform who come in there. They didn't have to go to basic training, and again, they're not called up to a battlefield, and might say, "Geez, these guys." Took a shortcut to get to where they are. So we don't know how that's going to work. After talking to them, I'm really not convinced that this couldn't have been done with a regular consultancy sort of arrangement.
But that is not the only problem here, right?
Actually,
The
the biggest problem,
Yes,
I say, is one that comes from the future of technology, specifically
right,
AI. So right now, OpenAI, Meta, other companies, Google, Microsoft, Anthropic, they're creating this technology that they call superintelligence.
right.
AGI, could do anything. And there's a question that they talk about that this could present as existential threat to humanity. And they say that they're vowed to make it safe. And one of the things that these companies, and AI's OpenAI specifically says, Anthropic says the same thing, that we don't want our AI to do harm to people. And we don't
Right.
want our AI to be used to create weaponry. Okay, so here's
That
employees.
seems good,
Yeah,
right?
that seems great,
Okay.
and it seems, let me tell you, necessary because they're
Right. Because
building
we all
this
don't wanna
this
die.
intelligence, right? So
Yeah.
our hope, if you accept their premise that this is earth-shattering technology that's gonna change everything, not everyone does. If you accept that premise, then you say, "Well, let's build it in a way where there's these guardrails that they can't jump." That even
Right.
if the AI wants to figure out, like, to get
How
done
to
what we
kill
wanna
us
get done,
all.
some humans have to go. They can't do that, right?
Right.
Okay, here's these people who are now working for the military whose goal is the opposite. They've
Right.
stated that you're there to increase lethality. So
Right.
what the military wants to do is weaponize AI to do exactly what the companies are telling us should never be done. So here's these folks who are, on one hand, sitting in conference rooms saying, gee, how do we make sure our AI will never be used as a weapon? And then go to meet with their military compadres and say, gee, how do we make AI more deadly?
I mean, it seems like a recipe for disaster.
With all of AI, we're in unknown territory here. We don't know how this is going to check out, but it would seem that this was something that you'd have to give thought to before you had people who were working for the companies building advanced AI, then also working to use it in a way that is going to harm human beings, which is against the stated ethics of the companies they work for.
I would love you to explain to us what the solve would be here.
Again, as you pointed out, we need this kind of smarts and this kind of technology. We have to have our military to be more nimble. We can't be spending billions of dollars for things that don't work, white elephants. And there's a smarter way to do this. There's a company called Anduril, formed up by the guy named Palmer Luckey, who incidentally was fired from Meta because he supported Donald Trump when that wasn't cool at Meta, and he loved the military when
Right
that wasn't cool
now,
at
that's
Meta.
very cool at Meta. Yes,
Yeah,
go
as a
on.
matter of fact, after they fired him, Mark Zuckerberg fired him. Just in the last few weeks, Mark Zuckerberg says, we're going to partner with him, the same guy. And there's a picture of them smiling together, when Zuckerberg fired him for the things that now Zuckerberg is doing himself, which is supporting
Right.
Donald Trump and, becoming, like a military fanboy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got that. But back to Anduril, yeah, they're making the army smarter. They're making our soldiers more safe by giving them a better view of the battlefield, and really moving us into the modern age. The question is, with AI, are we building a technology with a new level of destruction? Is it like the next nuclear power that, we've been careful, fortunately, not to use since we dropped the bomb, in
Right.
1945, right? The scariest thing that I heard researching this story is the spokesperson for the detachment, or actually, no, it was a talent officer, said when he was conceiving the plan, he said, yeah, we wanted to create like an Oppenheimer-like situation. And I'm thinking, gee, did
Wait, what?
Oppenheimer create like the atom bomb? Maybe we don't want an Oppenheimer-like situation.
Yeah, what? Did they not know who Oppenheimer was?
I think he was referring to the idea that the Manhattan Project used America's,
S
best private
scientists.
cabinet, yeah, and
Yeah.
scientists to help fight, a quote good war, right? But it has implications considering what AI might be that perhaps he didn't intend.
Are you shocked at how little tech regulation Congress has done?
It's one of those cases, and you hear this a lot, this expression, "Not surprised, but shocked," right? Shocked, but not
Yeah.
surprised. A couple of years ago, Sam Altman went to Congress, the CEO of OpenAI, and said, "Regulate us." And everyone in the industry was saying, "We need this regulation. This
Right.
technology is so powerful." And now they're not saying that so much. And,
Because they
you know,
lost interest or because?
Because now they see they don't have to regulate because the Trump administration has said, JD Vance went to a big AI conference and said, I'm not concerned with AI safety. I'm concerned with competitiveness. I'm concerned the United States has to get AGI before China gets it and full speed ahead, right?
Stupid.
And the companies didn't say, hold on here. We need regulation like they did a couple of years ago. They're saying, okay, yeah, let's go faster. And as a matter of fact, now that we're doing this, why don't we classify all this copyrighted material we're using to train our models that we're being sued for? Why don't we just classify it? We can do that and get rid of these lawsuits because we have to be competitive.
I was at a party and a member of Congress was complaining about how there's no fact checking on the internet. And I was like, you could have. Is there any world in which we see members of the government deciding to regulate? I mean, would something so here's my anxiety. We get so far down this road that we can't, there are no fail safes. There are no by the time they realize they have to regulate, it's too late.
I did a story about Anthropic, one of the big AI companies, and that's a,
Yeah.
a company that's gone out of its way to brand itself as we're the ones most interested in safety and worried about these long-term implications, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to have what they call a race to the top by showing it can be done safely. Other companies will emulate their methods. But even Anthropic says, gee, the timeline for AGI kind of comes sooner than the timeline for our being able to control AI. Right, and I said, so they are the one company that's saying the right kind of regulation is it might be necessary. And I asked the CEO, Dario Amodei, do you think we're going to need some sort of AI Pearl Harbor before we really act on this? And he said, yes. I don't know what that looks like, but it's bad.
Oh, good. All right. Well, I plan to never sleep again. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Molly. I enjoyed it.